Hare Krishna. Any kartals? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki, Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Jai Vishnupat Paramahamsa Parivarajikacharya Ashtottara Sati Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Mayapur Navadvip Dhama Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Srimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Is it loud enough or is it a little too quiet? Just touch more. Thank you. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, it's on the screen, okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayashva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 29. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Aham tattvam vyajayata. Aham tattvam vyajayata. Karyakarana kartratma. Karyakarana kartratma. Bhutendriya manomayaha. Bhutendriya manomayaha. Vaikarikas tejascha. Tejasascha. Vaikarikas tejasascha. Tamasaschityaham tridha. Tamasaschityaham tridha. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Aham tattvam vyajayata. Karyakarana kartratma. Bhutendriya manomayaha. Vaikarikas tejasascha. Tamasaschityaham tridha. Prabhus. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Aham tattvam vyajayata. Karyakarana kartratma. Bhutendriya manomayaha. Vaikarikas tejasascha. Tamasaschityaham tridha. Mahattatvad vikurvanat. Aham tattvam vyajayata. Karyakarana kartratma. Bhutendriya manomayaha. Vaikarikastejasascha Tamasaschatyaham tridha. Ladies? Mahattatvad vikurvanad aham tattvam vyajayata karyakarana kartratma bhutendriya manomaya vaikarikastejasascha tamasaschatyaham tridha. Anyone else? Mahattatvad vikurvanad aham tattvam yajayata karyakarana kartratma bhutendriya manomaya vaikarikastejasascha tamasaschatyaham tridha. Mahat, the great, Tattvat, from the casual truth, Vikurvanat, being transformed. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki. Aham, false ego, Tattvam, material truth, Vyajayata, became manifested. Karya, effects, Karana, cause, Kartra, doer, Atma, soul or the source, Bhuta, material ingredients, Indriya, senses, Manamaya, hovering on the mental plane, Vaikarika, the mode of goodness, Tejasa, the mode of passion, Cha, and Tamasa, the mode of ignorance, Cha, and Iti, thus, aham, false ego, tridha, three kinds. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Mahat Tattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport by His Divine Grace. A pure living entity in his original spiritual existence is fully conscious of his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Lord. All souls who are situated in such pure consciousness are liberated, and therefore they eternally live in bliss and knowledge in the various Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. When the material creation is manifested, it is not meant for them. The eternally liberated souls are called Nitya Muktas, and they have nothing to do with the material creation. The material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to accept subordination under the Supreme Lord. This spirit of false lordship is called false ego. It is manifested in the three modes of material nature, and it exists in mental speculation only. Those who are in the mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode of passion try to lord it over material nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. This false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egoistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by identification of the gross body with the self. Thus all their activities are centered around the body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with the false egoistic ideas, but at the same time the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that they may understand the science of Krishna and thus make their lives successful. The entire material creation, therefore, is meant for the falsely egoistic, living entities hovering on the mental plane under different illusions in the modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna. Well, the physics lesson continues today with some more details of the different elements and how they transform, how they act, how they affect different living entities. And so the topic, as mentioned, that we've come to as the different ingredients transform and manifest is from Mahat Tattva to now false ego. And that's really the main item in today's verse. The false ego underlies everything that we do here in this world, and without the false ego we could not function. Therefore it is one of the earliest creations. It is one of the earliest creations in this wider creation of the primary creation, where the Lord assembles all the ingredients and manifests all the ingredients. And then later on also, when Brahma manifests the entire creation as part of his secondary creation, false ego, ahankar, these items also manifest very much in the beginning. So there are successive stages of manifestation. The Lord creates everything in principle, because without the ingredients, without the fundamental principles, no one that follows can do anything. Brahma, Lord Brahma, who is described as the engineer of this universe, can only engineer something that exists. Even the best engineers today need to start by extracting some raw materials from the earth. They certainly don't create them by scratch. And then they don't create the laws either. Utilizing the laws, the raw elements, and then some expertise which is transmitted through learning, through passing down, they're able to transform elements in nature into useful objects, and in some cases not so useful objects. But still, that depends upon the primary ingredients existing. So the Lord has to manifest everything, and it is very much necessary for us to have the false ego as our companion. Because by nature we are spirit souls. We are spiritual beings, part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Right? We are eternal fragments, eternal sparks connected to the Lord, who's described as the supreme flame or the supreme fire. And in that sense we are of the same nature as the Lord, purely spiritual. Yet we are trapped in this body which is purely material. It gives us exactly the opposite environment to which we need to function fully. So we're here in this world of matter, and just in order for us to operate here, we need a dose of illusion. We need an injection of illusion, just to bewilder us, to think, wow, this is great. This place was made for my enjoyment, and now everyone here is also meant for my enjoyment. And all these philosophies are meant to entertain me intellectually. All these beautiful items of the Lord's creation are meant for my sense enjoyment, to satisfy my nose, my ears, my eyes. All of that cannot exist without the false ego. The true ego, if you like, and we tend not to use the word ego in its true manifestation. We prefer to use the word identity, in the same way that you wouldn't really use the word lust to describe its spiritual counterpart, which is pure love. So it's sometimes useful to keep the terminology separate, that ego inherently has a sort of a negative connotation to it. And therefore we qualify it often by using the term false ego. But true ego is there, I suppose, but it's typically not so desirable to use it. But the point is that ego refers to identity. What is the status of your operation? What is the makeup of your consciousness? And that ego in the spiritual sense manifests like this. My identity, my nature, is that I am an eternal servant of the Supreme Lord, meant to give him different varieties of assistance, pleasure, service, and to satisfy him and all his extensions, his parts and parcels, and all those who also serve him, to give him pleasure. That's the identity of the spirit soul in the spiritual world. The identity of the conditioned spirit soul in the material world is that I am the Lord and Master of everything I survey. Everything is here for my enjoyment. If there is a God, thank you, God, for giving me all these options to enjoy. And therefore, even amongst philosophies where God is accepted and even respected, typically the approach to God is one of, God, please give me more sense gratification. God, please give me this, please solve my problems, please give me something else. That's how most people approach God, whichever faith they happen to be in. The vast majority are in that kind of category. That God, you're the Supreme Lord, you're the all-powerful, you're the Master. Yes, I accept you're the Lord, now please give me something. So this is typically unsatisfactory for a devotee, because a devotee is not so interested in just continuing the illusion of being the proprietor in this world. This is the big difference between a genuine devotee and someone who is a pseudo-spiritualist. A devotee has no fundamental interest in continuing the illusory stay that we have here in this world. So therefore we don't do anything, even with God's assistance, to make that illusion deeper and deeper and deeper. Let's consider what typically happens if the Lord supplies supplies the ingredients for fulfilling the fantasies in our head. Let's say he supplies all that to us. Maybe we want money, maybe we want fame, we want reputation, strength, power, whatever it is. And let's say the Lord gives it to us. What does that empower us to do? It empowers us to enjoy the world, to develop more and more plans to enjoy the world, to mistreat others with now more competence in order to enjoy the world. So that benediction or boon that we requested from the Lord actually does nothing whatsoever in reinstating us in our original position at the Lord's lotus feet. It simply now continues to propagate a situation of illusion for us. And the longer that situation of illusion continues, the more we suffer in this world. The more we suffer. And therefore, the Bhagavatam makes a very great distinction between pseudo-religious behavior and real religious behavior. There are many verses describing that, and many incidents and pastimes which illustrate this difference. But it is very important, because almost right from the beginning, from the second verse, we hear that dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmat saranam satam. That this Bhagavatam completely kicks out anything that is non-conforming with pure devotional service, cheating religion. It is completely removed. And only the non-envious can have entrance into it. Nirmatsaranam satam. Satam is a saintly person, and by nature they are nirmatsara, without envy. Envy is a direct effect of the false ego. Therefore, to truly appreciate the Bhagavatam and to truly enter into the Bhagavatam, we need to progressively make progress. We need to make progress, and simultaneously as we learn the material, we need to make progress in reducing the effect of envy in our lives. And that is something that's not so easy, because it is deep-seated. Most of us have been raised in different ways, in different families, in different circumstances. Some of us may have been raised, and actually as the world is progressing, as Kali Yuga progresses, and the last leg truth is rapidly disappearing, we can safely say that an ever-increasing number of people will be taught the techniques of manipulation and lies as part of their routine education in life. And perhaps some of us may have learnt these techniques, maybe from accomplished experts, which may well be in our own family. And therefore we simply pick up those things. If we analyze the situation with a neutral viewpoint, not out of favoritism towards this, and not in any way compromising the natural love and affection we have for our family members, but understanding that those family members, when they are in a situation of illusion, which is created by the ahankar, ahankara vimuratma, that situation of illusion, they act in ways that are contrary to their own spiritual nature. So we should be able to analyze each and every situation and see it for what it is. And therefore we can see that we have probably been trained in this world, and even naturally, if our nature really was constantly averse to untruthful behavior, over years of impression and forced impressions and propaganda, we may have even accepted some of that over time. But it's very dangerous, because whenever there's a situation of something untruthful, illusory, or a desire to manipulate another person to further my sense gratification, my position, my ego. Sometimes people who are adept at manipulating others do so, definitely not for the benefit of the situation, but they do for the furtherance of their position. Their position, their status, maybe the privileges that they get. Status doesn't necessarily have to come with a salary. It can be in terms of how people view you. Maybe you would like to be seen as the top dog. Therefore you put everyone else down so you get a subtle kick out of others offering you respect. It works very subtly. False ego is a particularly dangerous and unpleasant component that we have within our makeup. And the way it manifests is to really keep us away from Krishna. It keeps us away from Krishna. It is like a firm physical barrier that simply prevents us accessing Krishna's mercy. So we are here in the right place. We are learning, first of all, that we have this problem. Because after all, how many doctors tell you that you have this problem? Right? They'll tell you the opposite, if anything else. They'll say you just have low self-esteem. If you ever start to suggest, I would like to be better situated mentally, more humble. They would say, come on, get out of it. You just have low self-esteem. You're the best. Just repeat it. You're the best. Look at yourself in a mirror. What do you like? Do you like what you see? Yes, tell yourself that 3 times every morning. Okay, that's what the mundane psychologists will say to you, just in order to boost what? What are they boosting? Your false ego. Does that ultimately help you? Of course it doesn't. It may help you to be more materially adept now at maneuvering material nature, material energy, and even other people, but does it help you go back to Krishna? No, it does a complete disservice. Because what you actually need to see when you look in that mirror is, oh dear, what I'm seeing is a direct manifestation or a direct visible reminder of my sinful life. This body that I have acquired, which is defective in so many ways, and which constantly leads me along the path of sense gratification, is simply an indicator of my sinful life, of my past sinful life. Now, of course, once we start utilizing that body in the service of Krishna, you can no longer quite apply that statement in its full rigidity. What we can say is, though, that what we see is a manifestation of perhaps remnants now, depending on how far we are along the process, of remnants of past sinful habits. And even not so much, we don't have to get into the details of sinful habits, etc. We can just stick to the false ego, as that's the topic of this verse. It is a visible reminder that of my desire to forget Krishna. Otherwise, I would not have this body. I would have a spiritual body, a transcendental body that allows me to put aside my own personal agendas, my own personal needs, my own personal attractions to different philosophies or ideas, and simply serve Krishna without obstruction. I really wouldn't be worried who gets all the credit after I've done a big project. We simply wouldn't be concerned about that. We wouldn't really care how much remuneration I get if I do this job. We wouldn't care how many other people I manage to influence and how many people bow down to me with great respect if I do this. We simply wouldn't care. If we have an absence of false ego in our makeup, we would simply consider that this body is to be used in the service of Guru, Srila Prabhupada and Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna. It was all supplied by Krishna, all the ingredients were supplied by him. Just look at all the effort Krishna has gone to manifest this universe for us. Just consider that. This is the beginning part of Canto 3, Chapter 5, where Vidura is just hearing from Maitreya about this creative aspects. You'll hear a lot more detail later when Kapiladev, in this canto, Kapiladev instructs Mother Devahuti about the items of creation. Topics of secondary creation are discussed then as well. It's a gigantic undertaking that the Lord has done. And he has done it in conjunction with his external energy. His internal energy isn't bothered with this world. His internal energy is accessible to the yogis who are immersed in transcendental bliss. Ramante yoginam anante satyananda chidatmani. They are enjoying a transcendental bliss in perception of the spiritual world. That's where the Lord is, undergoing his pastimes with his devotees in Goloka, in the Vaikuntha planets, or anywhere where there is topics of the Lord being discussed or where there is devotional service rendered to the Lord. That's where he is to be found. So he enlists the help of the material energy. And Prabhupada makes that clear, that the material energy is enlisted. And therefore Durga Devi is described as the superintendent of this world. And very fundamental to this special creation that the Lord has done is the presence of the three modes. Durga Devi is you could say, the overseer of the three modes for practical purposes. Of course, they also have their own, there are also specific entities for each of the modes. As indeed in the Vedic understanding, it is not that there is anything called dull matter. There are personalities behind every energy. And so whatever the energy is, there is a personality behind it. And therefore, these modes also have personalities. And depending on how the false ego operates through each of the modes, this was the subject of the verse, Prabhupada says, all such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So we have this entity, the false ego, but it acts utilizing the facilities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And those actions can be different. In the purport, Prabhupada explains some examples of the differences. He says that sometimes people who are in the mode of goodness, the way their false ego manifests is that they think everyone is God. They themselves are God and everyone is God. Now this is 100% in the category of false ego, because everyone clearly is not God. God is God. He can create, He can maintain, He can destroy. We can only do little petty things, insignificant things compared to the grandeur of God's creation. There's absolutely no question of anyone calling themselves God. Then people have a variation on this. They say, okay, God is great, but when He comes under Maya, He acts just like us, acts like a conditioned living entity. And therefore, when we overcome that through a practice of some spiritual process or whatever, we will be resituated in our standard situation of being God again. That is still completely false ego. At the heart of that, the desire to be God comes with it, the subtle concept, the very strong subtle concept that I am the enjoyer. But that's not our nature at all. Our nature is as prakriti, as designed to give the Lord pleasure. Not designed, because as Krishna explains in the Gita, that all of you, he says to Arjun, you, myself, all these soldiers have existed eternally. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. It's not that we were created as souls. We've always existed with the Lord. But it is a simultaneous existence of the Lord, the servant, the one who offers pleasure, the one who accepts pleasure. That's the natural arrangement. And we have that manifested in the sense of Purusha and Prakriti. But by nature, in the spiritual sense, we are all Prakriti, designed to give pleasure to the Lord. And so this example of goodness is one such example. That if one is has a mode of goodness perspective on life, or they're attracted to the mode of goodness, or they operate predominantly through it, their false ego may manifest in this way, that they look around and see everyone as being God, or that they themselves will become God. Don't forget the word false. It is still false. However eloquently someone presents this philosophy, it still remains bogus. And therefore we also learn, as we go through the Bhagavatam, not to be enamored by very silky presentations on concepts which can bewilder your mind. Everything is one, everything is everything. The drop becomes the ocean becomes the drop. There's all sorts of this stuff going on. And people lose themselves completely. And at the end of the day, they learn nothing about Krishna. They simply learn a few confusing facts in the mind which simply keep them here in this world, enjoying, speculating, trying to lord and conquer. Well, we have a few more examples. Mode of passion. And it's quite an interesting one. He says, some of those in the mode of passion engage in altruistic activities, as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. I must do something for this cause, for that cause. If I don't do it, the world will end. Now that is false ego. That is false ego, through and through. The world existed billions of years before you turned up. The world will continue to exist billions of years after you've gone. And all of humanity, and all the demigods. And only at the time of Krishna's choosing will the world be annihilated. If we think we are so important in the cosmic scheme of things that the world depends upon us, and therefore we act with a certain entitlement that I must support this campaign, and if you don't support this campaign, you're a sinner and you're going to hell. Next year it's a different campaign. The year after that, it's yet another campaign. You just turn on the news, there's several of them going on at the moment, and they've been transforming over the years. Different agendas, different people, different groups, all with the same principle, all acting on the false ego with passion, under the mode of passion. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki. They would be very upset to hear this description of their activities. But that is what it is. Because mode of passion makes you feel like you're doing something good. Isn't it? As the Gita says it very clearly. When one acts under the mode of passion, they feel some pleasure. But it very quickly turns painful. It very quickly turns bitter. Whereas activities in the mode of goodness start off a little bit difficult. Maybe there's some austerity involved. Maybe it's something new, unpleasant. But then later on, it transforms into something that gives you a level of happiness and contentment which passion can never give you. Therefore, this passion is these are just examples, by the way. Just as in the mode of goodness, it is very good to see others as divine entities, because obviously each person is the soul ultimately. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when you kind of elevate their divinity to something beyond what it actually is. And similarly, mode of passion people, if they engage in altruism or charitable activities, it's not that as a principle that's wrong either. It's just that mentality by which they do that is fundamentally misplaced. If we have the mood that we should look after people, we should look after the environment, we should look after others' progress back to Krishna as a service to Krishna, and then we engage in different activities or projects to help that, keeping into perspective what the goal is, the pleasure of the Lord, and taking everyone to his lotus feet, then even all those activities that we just described are not wrong. They're also good. But sadly, because false ego is the driving motivation behind anyone's practices, we have problems. And then we have ignorance, right? And what does Prabhupada say about ignorance? Their activities are centered around the body only. So that is sense gratification. I like to eat this, I want more of it. How can I get more of it? Then maybe I have to beg, borrow, steal in order to get it. Maybe because my taste buds need more entertainment than I gave them with some rasgullas, I now need to slaughter a few animals to give them that. It doesn't matter who I expend in the process of my sense gratification. if my desire for sense gratification is so strong, I will expend anything and everything to have it. And therefore, election time is coming around now. And in election time, everyone is promising you different things. Some are promising you philosophical ideals. Some are promising to do whatever it takes for your sense gratification and throw everything else out of the window. Everything else. Others are trying to redefine for you what your sense gratification should be. I.e., you should spend more and more and more. And we will supply you plenty of free money in order to do so. But just keep spending. That will make you happy, it will make us happy, and everyone's happy. Well, really? No, all of these three types of presentations, when you'll hear that and many more varieties, there was someone I heard called Bin Face. There's one candidate who wears a bin on his head. And he actually stood as a candidate somewhere, Mr. Bin Face. And it's actually an ironic presentation that's probably more accurate. At least there's a straightforwardness about it. That I haven't got a clue what to do with the world. I don't actually know what to do that's ultimately best for people. And therefore I'll simply portray myself as I am, a dustbin. That's it. There's something refreshing about that. Now, of course, you may be in the same category if you actually vote for that, but but still, really we have to be very, very careful. That there has so far been no single person elected anywhere that actually did everything they were elected to do. Right? Otherwise you wouldn't have a drama every election time. Get out the old one. He promised us all this. It's time for him to go. All of this is based on false ego. Because all their decisions, their policies, their manifestos are all based upon the body. How to help my body. How to help my immediate dependents' bodies. How to help the body of my country. Maybe with a nationalistic vein. But not at all. How to help God. How to please God. How to bring everyone else to His lotus feet. That is the problem. All that is required is for all the altruism, all the good desires that each of these candidates genuinely have. Many of them genuinely believe that what they're doing will help people. But unless you know the science of the soul, you will fundamentally misunderstand it. Ye shastra vidhim utsrija vartate kama karataha nasasidim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. That if one acts against the injunctions of Scripture, and they will do if they don't even know what the injunctions of Scripture are, they act whimsically, and all their activities and projects simply lead to more disturbance for the population. That's what we have seen generation after generation, century after century. Projects that are so-called meant for the benefit and upliftment of people. They do produce some benefit maybe, but they also produce a whole new suite of additional problems. If we ever want to transcend above this, temporary sticking plaster, as Prabhupada calls it, sticking plaster solutions to the root problem in this material world, false ego, that we think we are here to enjoy and at the expense of others, then we will never ultimately be happy. And the situation of the world will never ultimately be transformed. We'll simply have a yo-yo between one product, one propaganda, and 5 years' time, another product, another propaganda. And you'll simply oscillate between the two, because neither of them will give you satisfaction. The very fact that you have to change your kings or your rulers demonstrates that people are not happy with them. And so therefore, we really hope for the day when there can be some leadership which has Krishna consciousness, spiritual consciousness, actually helping people to do what is best for them, rather than using them as a tool for what did I mention earlier? What do people do? They develop their own positions, their own levels of respect, maybe their own financial gain, rather than seeing the populations as being tools to gain me power, prestige, or whatever. They need to see themselves as servants desiring to do good for everyone else. Now, of course, these points that I've made should be taken in the correct context. There are many nice persons acting in the realm of politics. We meet them, we host them, we deal with them. They are nice people. But something is required to transform those genuine, charitable, genuine good desires into something that actually works for people's benefit. And that is Krishna consciousness. So if simply we can educate people, help them understand the essential science that's been codified by Krishna himself, by God, and then the examples of all the great leaders in this world, and we understand the goal of human life, which is to reduce this false ego and resituate ourselves at the Lord's lotus feet, then everyone will actually be able to be a good leader. So I'll stop there. Let's see if there are any comments, questions.
Thank you for the class. My question is, you mentioned that people think that they're going to do something and they're going to change the world. But I wonder, should we in Krishna consciousness have that perspective that if someone doesn't do something, how will the world be saved or how will the world be changed? I wonder, in terms of Krishna consciousness, should we have that perspective that it needs to be, we have to take the responsibility to change the world?
Yes, there's in one sense that is itself a demonstration of the false ego, but it's mixed up with another item as well, which isn't really false ego based, that's devotional service based. The prospect of us changing the world shouldn't in any way be connected with a desire to serve the Lord to bring benefit to others. We should desire to serve the Lord to bring benefit to others. And the transformation that's expected or desired is janataga viplava, as it says in the Bhagavatam, that the saintly persons are interested in activities that result in a revolution in one's consciousness, revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilizations. That can happen at the same time as the world being in a very precarious position. Those two things are not contradictory. We should desire to serve the Lord to the best of our capacity, and then following in the footsteps of the great saints that we have, Prahlad Maharaj, Haridas Thakur, we should be prepared to utilize all our energy and all our God-given faculties for the benefit of others. We do not have to do the calculation or use it as a motivation that I have to save the world. The world is beyond saving. If we think we're going to save the world, we have simply taken shelter of false ego ahankar. It's not our business and it's not our job description. The world has been created, as Prabhupada says. One description he gives is that the material world has been created for the conditioned living entities, just as naughty children are given playing cradles. Naughty children are given playing cradles, right? It's a toy. It's not ever going to be anything other than a toy. This world is designed for the Nitya Baddhas. Krishna explains this very clearly. Those who've given up their original spiritual existence and wish to lord it over nature. This is who the world has been created for. Therefore, look at the nature of this world. It will always be of that character. That doesn't say anything about the nature of the people who inhabit that world. The world will remain as it is. And Durga Devi has to do her job. The modes of nature have to do their job. And they will test everyone. Whoever desires to enter this world foolishly will be tested and then given some fun, given some pain, given opportunities, given repression. The two things need to be separated in our minds. We serve the Lord for His satisfaction and for His pleasure, and to please Srila Prabhupada in assisting all others. As to whether the world gets saved or not, secondary. That should never motivate us. We know philosophically or through Prabhupada's writings that the world can become a much better place if people themselves become a much better place. That's a fact, isn't it? It's clear, right? If everyone in this room is a pure devotee, imagine what kind of conversation and discussion we could have. It would just be of a level which is amazing, right? And imagine if there's assemblies around the country where they're full of pure devotees. Imagine that place, that atmosphere, that environment would literally be something sublime and uplifting. So you have changed that little world. But that was never the goal. If enough people become devotees, and that's why we really need to grab them wherever they are, from the Outer Hebrides down to the Isle of Man or Dog or wherever, each person has to be given a chance to consider Krishna. If people consider Krishna, they have a chance to test the way of life and they decide it's not for me. Fine, that's their sovereign decision. But many people have not had a presentation of Krishna at anywhere near a reasonable or substantial level. Our job is to give them that opportunity. It's not to dictate the decisions they will make. It's to just simply give them the opportunity. We give them a book, we say, please read this book, understand something about Krishna, understand about the spiritual world. It will help you. And if they do that, they attain success. If they don't, well, their journey continues. And they have the choice, the desire, the choices, the chance, the facility, as supplied by who? As supplied by Durga Devi and the modes of nature, to fully give them what they need as part of their karmic progress. So that's what I would say. So we have Prabhuji, a question?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. My question is regarding these sort of altruistic or helping the world or world development type of things. As someone practicing Krishna consciousness, how much should we get involved in those sorts of things, and what should one do when they have friends that might be in Krishna consciousness? They might also be having some sort of attachment or maybe desire to try and make the world a better place through, maybe it's veganism, maybe it's, other types of, it feels worldly, but also at the same time there might be a spiritual side to it.
Yes, that's very interesting. So there's one principle I would like you to offer to consider. It is that our directions in life, or our principles that we implement in our life, should not be done simply because a friend does them. Friends are friends and doctors are doctors. And if you have a disease that needs fixing, you don't ask your friend to operate on you. So you have to go to the appropriate expert for that. So if your friend likes doing something like this, that does not mean, and they also are learning about Krishna consciousness and are also becoming a devotee, that does not necessarily mean that that is an example for you to also implement. So that's kind of like a principle that we should keep in mind. We should always be trying to follow in our own lives, in terms of spiritual decisions, the highest possible example that we can get. The highest possible example, starting from the Goswamis, the Acharyas, then the very senior devotees amongst us, in our presence, the highest possible. That should be the guiding force for the principles which we live by. Now, behaving in a way that is protective of the environment is inherently in our philosophy and specifically in the 4 regulative principles that are given to us. Therefore, the two things are not inherently contradictory either. If you follow no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, you cut out a whole range of abuse that you would do to the environment. If you cut out meat, you immediately cut out intense factory farming. Huge amounts of damage done to the environment. Then coming up with creative situations to stop cows burping, right? Because they release methane. They're doing this now, modifying feed, even doing genetic experiments. It's getting bad. Now fining people for holding cows, that's also happening now. And look at the root cause of it. You've created a massive problem by having multiples of animals intensely reared just to satisfy your meat craving. You immediately reduce all that damage, immediately, without any of these artificial sticking plaster solutions. If you live simply, and you live a simple life, not collecting excess possessions, how much good we do for the environment, right? In today's world, there is an emphasis on not reducing your consumption, but somehow trying to deal with the consequence of it. We're damaging the environment with all the pillaging and all the extracting and whatever we do to Mother Earth, and we can see it's being polluted. And the solution is never mentioned that you should consume less. The solution is, let's start this scheme. Let's start trading carbon credits, as if that in any way is a financial trick employed by most companies to make them think that they're doing something good for the environment. No, they still produce as much carbon as they wanted to, but then they have to pay someone. It's all done through credits and trading. You remove the issue from the source. You put it on some tree grower in the Amazon, instead of you yourself reducing your consumption. It's trying to keep up the illusion of enjoying this world, while at the same time pretending or convincing yourself you're doing something about it. Continuing mass consumption with an ever-increasing range of products that are designed to fail after 2 years. And we love it, because every new 2-year edition gives you some new shiny feature that you must have and couldn't have lived without before. Your toaster has to be so smart it can put the bread in itself. Really? That kind of thing. Imagine if, as devotees, and we are taught to live simply, that would also reduce at the source massively. So I can't think of any sort of agenda that's going on in the world at the moment, whether it's stop the oil, whether it's stop global warming, whether it's ozone. It was an ozone thing 15 years ago. Whatever it is that it could be. You mentioned veganism. Stop cruelty to animals. Well, we do that fundamentally. We don't need to adopt veganism as a principle to do that. No, a healthy lifestyle, using animals in the correct way, is not forbidden. To use animals is not a sin. Animals have their place in society. They are meant to be used correctly by humans, not abused and killed. That's another level. People think if you use animals, you have to abuse them too. No, that's a speculation. So all the principles we follow naturally actually solve the root, actually assist in solving the root problem that all of these groups are trying to prevent. Why would you ship pointless plastic items 10,000 miles around the world? How much pollution does that use? If you didn't do that, how much oil would you save? I mean, just think about it. It's not rocket science. The natural life of a devotee is inherently respectful to the environment. And so the two things aren't contradictory. But as to whether we need to start campaigning for that, over and above progressing in our Krishna consciousness, that is a decision that we need to make with guidance with our mentors, but never compromising the principles, that you don't do it just because your friend does it. There may well be a case for a limited, targeted approach to participating in some activities. But is it really limited and targeted, or does it eventually end up consuming that person? Typically we see that the latter happens. So how do you remain Krishna conscious? Don't forget, and as one senior person mentioned in a class once, the demigods, just with a click of their fingers, they can just transform this earth. This is how powerful they are. We rely on them for our water, for our sunlight, for all the things that we live off. We think we have to do things to earth in order to improve it. They can click their fingers and it's changed. Again, that in no way compromises our need to behave correctly. So we just have to have a proper, mature perspective on life. And heart of it is this passion thing, that we must fix the problem. No, let's at least start by taking ownership of the fact that we caused the problem. Let's stop doing that. Forget fixing. There's agents who can fix stuff. We just stop causing the problem. If we can assist with that, that's the biggest service. Any questions? Yes, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can articulate this. Might be a bit long. I don't think we have that much time left. But I'm just I'll ask it now. Maybe we can continue afterwards. But yeah, but basically fairly odd thing has happened. Like it seems like Krishna's playfulness coming into action to some degree. Basically, so I just came to Guru Puja at the end of Guru Puja just now, and a friend who I haven't seen in quite a while and who I hadn't told anything about anything. I sort of that last chapter of my life, I basically just completely cut ties and didn't contact anybody. It was just like over. And then has suddenly appeared here randomly in the temple. That's why I was like hugging for like a overly long time there. But basically the interesting part of this that leads to a question rather than just a random personal share is basically the main thing we were talking about. So it was like at these spiritual festivals, like Medicine Festival, and that's where I met him, and that's where this whole chapter, that whole previous chapter was about these festivals and things like this. And the main thing we were talking about was this concept of non-duality, which is basically the primary thing that is popular in modern spirituality. Or at least that's the perception that I have, is like in modern Western spirituality, it's always this talk about non-duality, like Rupert Spira, Eckhart Tolle is an example of this, Adyashanti, other people like this. It's always about this non-duality concept, and it is, in our terms, so to speak, it is totally impersonalism. It's impersonalism to the absolute maximum level degree. The idea is that there is no person. They keep saying that to you in the satsangs. Yes. They keep saying there is no person, there is no you, yes. There is nothing, things like this.
How does that feel? When you're sitting there as a living being, functioning being, and they tell you you don't exist. It feels a little something strange, right?
Yeah, it was confusing. In the end, it felt like gaslighting. In the end, it felt like abusive, basically. Like it was like something's very strange about it. And yet, this was the most popular form of spirituality. Like I was there as a spiritual seeker looking for spirituality, and what I was finding, at least in the Western psychological climate, was just this constant, this thing, non-duality. And so anyway, this friend, this is what we were discussing all the time. He seemed to understand it more than I understood it. And I was like, I still don't get it. I still think there's a me. And he's like, oh no, you'll understand. It's just, you just got to figure it out. The only false entity is you. And then once you disappear, you'll finally understand what they're talking about.
If you disappear, well, who's going to do the disappearing? I mean, it's like,
yeah. And so just to end the question, basically, it's like, and now he's somehow ended up here after being on that whole non-duality trip of impersonalism and stuff like that. So, and one of the things I have been praying about a lot is basically like this big doubt of like, these spiritual teachers seem to sort of, they're already awakened, they're already enlightened, they get it. And yet here we are like spending lifetime after lifetime just trying to like grasp some particle of Krishna's feet. Yes. And they're like, yeah, cool, right? Yeah, I'm here. I get it. I'm already awake. I'm enlightened. There's no me. That's it. The rest of it, that's just a bunch of, that's just a bunch of religious nonsense you're engaged in, basically. So this is a serious doubt in my mind, because part of my mind feels like that might be true, and part of my mind is like, impersonalism is also, there's something, like you were saying just now, there's something obviously discordant about impersonalism as well. Yeah. So basically, just articulating that doubt, and then obviously, just
briefly, I can maybe just say something about that. Yeah. The underlying thread of atheism has always been popular. It's not just a Western thing. In fact, you could say some top-notch atheists were in the East. Shankaracharya and others. Fully this, because ultimately the Lord does have three aspects. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan. He has three aspects. The full personal form is Bhagavan, the localized form is Supersoul, and then the all-pervading Brahmajyoti, his effulgence, which has an impersonal effect. Just like the rays from a light, they're impersonal. You can't really distinguish from them. So worshippers will typically connect themselves to the Lord in one of these three things. So it's no surprise that people head towards atheism because it actually gives them a chance for sense gratification. It is the fundamental driving force of atheism. You don't need to worry about anyone. No one exists. You can do whatever you like. It's something that very much aids it. Now just imagine the consequences. If someone is actively telling you to remove yourself from the picture, what are you then? You're simply a robot. And is that the dystopian future that you want? Where no person is valued for being anything other than a machine made of their parts? Is that really life? I mean, that's seriously worrying. That's where that philosophy would go to. That's how that would develop. You can be a robot, fine. And then who would program that robot? Maybe it was just there. We are so much more than that. It's the moment the baby is born, it's doing things, it's got instinct. It's not a question of you are the problem. What is you is the question that's in debate. They may have confused the body as being the problem. They may have confused the self as being the body, which is exactly what the Shastras say. They consider the self to be the body, and therefore they consider that any type of personality is an optional and troublesome extra. But it's actually completely the other way around. Our existence as a spiritual soul naturally has as a consequence consciousness and personality. And the body is this superfluous thing that we're carrying around. So imagine a world populated by bodies. Just that philosophy alone allows many people to justify slaughtering millions of animals. Ever since this philosophy was propounded that animals have no souls, millions and millions of people who would otherwise have thought twice before eating animals suddenly decided, oh, it's okay. Now imagine, you remove consciousness. What's left? Just a group of blind servants. And that's exactly what the dystopian future wants from us. We simply just become agents as part of a machine. So it's a troublesome philosophy which will assist the progress of Kali Yuga. But while we still have some intelligence and while we're still allowed to think, because that also will be changed, that also will be threatened. And you see it happening in regimes. If you think in a certain way, you get locked up. That should be seriously worrying for everyone. While we still have the facility, the freedoms, wherever we have them in the countries of the world, let's utilize them. Let's make our progress to Krishna and let's leave this world. Don't think this world is going to change. It's Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga is going to get worse and worse. There's going to be even more variations of these philosophies coming up in the next 20 years, next 30 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. And by the end of it, Kali Yuga, there will be no truthful, sane person left. That's the actual description from the scripture. We're just seeing steps of it manifesting. But we can appreciate the genuine aspects of a personal connection with God that genuinely we can appreciate. The chance to be with people who are prepared to dedicate their life to give Him pleasure, and then who genuinely make a stance to improve themselves. Now that itself is a very strong indicator of some substance or some sincerity. Any philosophy which advocates that you have to improve yourself and may have to go through a process of purification, to me seems a lot more genuine than a philosophy that just tells you, just believe something different and carry on as you are. It seems a lot more substantial to me, because we can clearly see that we have problems. Prajan Prabhu, last comment, and then we'll...
In chapter 17, it says it's similar to this. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform acts of sacrifice, penance, and charity with words tact. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to be free from the material entanglement. It says the absolute truth is the objective of devotional sacrifice. It is indicated by the word sat. The performer of such sacrifice is called Om Tat Sat, are all works of sacrifice, penance, which go to achieve the absolute nature, which are performed for the sake of the Supreme Person. O Son of Prithvi.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Om Tat Sat.
Yes.